Jambo jambo, jambo watoto wa Afrika. Yeah.
This is the iLead Africa Show, and on this episode, we profile Shitemi Hamadi. Shitemi is the managing editor at the Kenya Monitor. He writes on issues of African governance, economics, and development. He is engaged in storytelling Africa's struggle with peace and conflict.
It all started as a matter of, or an issue of curiosity, When I was young, I used to like news. And so that gave me a good picture of what is going on. And then in 2002, in December, when the NAC government was elected, in a very euphoric elections, maybe the bug also got me then. I think I saw the way there was a lot of unity in ensuring that the then regime is sent home. And I felt this is something I should also be part of.
He resolutely believes in the role of the media in keeping the public informed to promote good governance and better decision making.
From there, I decided that I have to be an active citizen. I have to, when I go to school, I did international relations, and I was very active a lot on issues of world affairs. I also took part in Kenya Model United Nations, which really gave me a lot of practical knowledge about how the world dynamics work.
Shitemi asserts that the solution to Africa's challenges is not to agonize, but to organize.
I look for a time when Kenyans will think of the actions, and especially what they say. There's a lot of vile, negative ethnicity that is around society. And I just hope there is one day where people will decide that they'll think first what they say, whether they'll act adversely or act contrary to what they're saying. It won't matter much. I mean, when you think of going to a ballot box, it's a secret ballot. I don't know how you voted, but if we can just think what we say, whether it's on social media, whether it's in our interpersonal relationship with people, I think that for me will be a good day.
Hello and welcome to the show. This is iLead Africa, where we raise the levels of leadership dialogues. With me today is Shitemi Hamadi, the Kenya Monitor Managing Director and a practicing freelance journalist in governance, economics and development in the region and in Kenya. Welcome, Hamadi.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Now, everyone is talking about the African promise. What does it mean to you?
I think the African promise means to me the ability of the Africans to tell their own narrative. The African promise, as has been argued, is largely hinged on the natural resources that are on the continent and how there is a wave of increased good governance in how these natural resources are impacting positively on development. You look at countries like Equatorial Guinea, which is today a middle-income economy, which wasn't 10 years ago. While they still had the oil, they have found a way of ensuring that the oil which they have is being better governed by them to create wealth and uplift the standards. So it's about the narrative which we say as Africans, first by Africans, and also as seen by others, as to how we are telling the story about the continent. Yes.
Okay, impressive. Now, you're often outspoken and bold on issues, politics and governance, in an environment repressive of self-expression. and freedom of speech. Do you think free speech harms or builds a nation?
I think free speech only builds a nation. It cannot harm a nation. When you read that our constitution, for instance, Article 33(1) on freedom of expression, it only includes 4 limitations on freedom of expression: advocacy to hatred, hate speech, incitement to violence, and propaganda to war. To the extent that anyone positively uses their freedom of expression to create knowledge, to challenge authority, to call for better governance, to call for leaders to account, there can't be a way in which you endanger yourself or you endanger society. In any case, it is only when you shine light upon that which is not right that even those that are in power can actually know that their decisions, both of commission and commission. Remember, when you're in office, you have the authority to keep silent and to do something. When you keep silent, that's a decision of omission, which has its ramification as well. And anyone who brings these issues to light is only in any way improving their ability to actually make better decisions when they do, and not the reverse.
Impressive. And how is open discussion on our challenges as a people important to us?
There are interesting stories. If you look at this country, for instance, I was in Kitui the other day, and they're talking about coal, okay? And the residents have been informed that the coal, which will be mined soon by the Chinese, will transform their lives. But they do not know who owns the oil. They are told that there are local shareholders. They do not know who are the local shareholders. There was a trip that some of the residents were taken to China to know where the owners are. But while they stayed there for 1 week, there was nothing. They didn't even see a building or an office that Feng Si, the company which was given the license to extract coal, is. So what does that tell you? There's a lot that is happening that we are not being told. Now there is a conscious decision to do that, because any informed society, better informed society will raise eyebrows. A very simple example is there is quite a lot of talk about corruption today, how it's endemic everywhere. In fact, the other day they were talking about Utalii College, right? There have been many other since, especially the Golden Bag, even dating back to the Kenyatta regime. You know, there used to be the fertilizer scandal, which the then finance minister, the former president, was involved. The difference is simple. Today, there is quite a lot of liberalization of information. People in governments are speaking up. Politicians and executives who are also holding these public offices are saying things which are not right, and they are bringing them to light. It may, to some extent, mean that today there is more corruption. But the other angle to look at it is that there is more openness, even from those who are in the system and they see harm being done. Okay? Now, that is a good thing. So, to the extent that we can tell some of these stories to ourselves, I always think that the best way you can ever do anything is to just feed people with information. That's it. Nothing more. What they decide to do with it, it's upon them.
Okay. What do you think is the potential of Twitter activism to promote change among the people?
And there is a lot of potential of using Twitter, and Twitter is much better than Facebook, largely because you can have an interaction with Twitter with anyone. Remember, when you have an online platform like Twitter, regardless of whether you have 1 million followers or you're none, you're all the same. So long as you know how to effectively communicate, you can raise your issue to anyone and the world will know about it. Now, what Twitter provides is twofold. One is your ability to mobilize people who are like-minded and people who, for instance, you could call them activists, to be aware of what is going on, both good and bad. But the other thing is that also Twitter do is to mobilize. You mobilize those who can come to you to support you or to support the call or the cause which you are doing. I would give you a good example. Last year when children were gassed at Langata Primary School, that information, while it was had been printed in the mainstream media, the conversation started on Twitter. People picked up that story. They started digging the owners of the hotel. They started rallying about what they should do about it, and even convening meetings. All that was happening on Twitter. And that can tell you the power that Twitter has in mobilizing. It may not mean that it is the solution, but it provides the avenue upon which you can make now the action. Remember, even if I were to use that example, while there's mobilization and creating information was on Twitter, actions were offline. Okay, so it is not the solution, but it is one way of creating information as to what could be the solution.
Okay, Shitemi, hold it right there. We're going in break. We'll be right back.
Fire burning, it tell them the truth, there's nothing to lose, no. You keep the fire burning. Keep the fire burning, it tell them the truth, there's nothing to lose, no. You keep the fire burning.
Welcome back to the show. This is iLead Africa, and with me is Hamadi, Shitemi Hamadi, the Kenya Monitor Managing Editor. Welcome back.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Now to my sixth question. What do you think is the most important task for a citizen?
The most important task for a citizen. You know, Article 3 of the Constitution says that every citizen has a duty to defend the Constitution. So that is our first duty for every citizen. And by defending the Constitution is ensuring that the values, the principles that are espoused in the document, because it is the living document, come to light at all times. When you, for instance, look at Article 10 of our Constitution, which talks about national values, some of our national values are things like integrity, accountability, transparency. Now, every citizen has a responsibility to ensure that in where they live, where they work, all that they see is being done lives up to the expectations of the Constitution. Now, this includes both what is in the private sector and in the public sector. Remember, all of us consume goods. So which means that even deeds that are happening in the private sector or the existence of the private sector, it also hinges on consumption of their services and goods by the public. Now that's the first and the primary role of every citizen. The second role of every citizen is that they should be aware. Remember that ignorance of the law is no defense. If you commit a crime today, you cannot go to a high court or to any court and say that you didn't know about the existence of that law or you're making a mistake. So the second responsibility of every Kenyan is to be aware. And we need to use all our means to be aware. And media is one platform which we need to use to be aware. And in Kenya, luckily, radio is over 80%, and which naturally we should be aware of some of the things that come up. And thirdly, the other responsibility now is to bring out what is our dream. What do we want to see is in our country? What do you want to see in your ward representative, who is your immediate elected leader? Do you want to see that the road which your mother uses to carry the tomatoes from the farm to the market, so that once she sells them, you have breakfast, you have your fees? As anyone who is of right mind, I think that it is your responsibility to air out your dream life, your dream service delivery from the providers or from both the public and private sector, so that your own life can be better. I always look at life that in whatsoever much you look at it as a selfish gain. I mean, like that example just given, if you look at that road which you use, or that road which your mother uses to get the tomatoes from the farm to the market, as benefiting you, then you also see the bigger picture. It will benefit other people. There's a ripple effect when we look at things from that prism. Yes.
Moving forward, what do you think should be done for Africa to have abundant opportunities for all people?
Well, I don't think that there is a lack of abundance. There is abundance. What needs to be done is equity. Equity in that the provision of these goods and services needs to be in a manner that ensures there is fairness in how every other individual receives them or uses them. When you look at construction of hospitals, which is a very core good for any living human being, fairness will demand that if Kisumu County has 85% of malaria prevalence, right? And Nakuru County has 40% of malaria prevalence. You should not take malaria drugs of the same quantity to both hospitals, right? You need to consider that dynamic, that Kisumu County has more, therefore take there more drugs, malaria drugs. But you should also need to also know that what is it that Nakuru has high prevalence of? It could be it could be TB. And so what do you do about that, and which Uasin Gishu County wouldn't? So fairness is one core thing which needs to happen on this continent for it to move forward. The other thing is just basic good governance. And by good governance is appreciating that there isn't a limitless opportunities for all of us. And there isn't even a limitless opportunity for those in power. They need to appreciate that when they embezzle, when they misappropriate funds, and also when they misgovern. Remember, even you misgovern by doing simple things like not giving people opportunities to serve meritoriously. If you qualify and you apply for an interview, you should be given that job or denied that job on the basis that you merit, with the exception on when you need to improve the general life standards or to abide by certain principles or provisions. I have in mind the marginalized. They could be young people, they could be women who need a pedestal because Africa is a largely patriarchal society. And good governance appreciates that is positive discrimination. Yeah.
From your workplace here at Power, what is the importance? What is the importance of bringing people together to drive change?
Well, the beauty of this ecosystem is the diversity that it has. So here you have poets, you have filmmakers, you have journalists, you have photographers, you have developers, you have activists. Now what that gives you is a breadth of unimaginable creativity that once you harness it, you're able to realize or reach a greater number of Kenyans. I say this because look at the representativeness of some of these creatives you have. A lot of them are about visual art. Now, the power of visual art is that it creates or sustains the image of what you see for a very long time. And you'll be reminded by the actions which you saw. Some which may be good, some which may be bad. Now here, the fusion of all these creatives coming together is that there's a lot of beauty in what they conceive. One is that there's a lot of collective unity and a common purpose in what they want. They could decide that there's been a lot of rampant corruption Now we need to do a song that highlights this corruption in the country. Now, the designer will have a role. A developer will have a role. The musicians will have a role. There'll be a producer somewhere. Now, all these are expertise which are within the space. Secondly, is that some of these creatives who are here have, you could say, are rookies, are learning. Now, because they're learning, they get to know from the best as to how not to do things and how to do things. What that breeds is what someone could call institutional capacity or institutional strengthening, which is very crucial for the long-term sustainability of some of this cultural change that we work on. Remember, because of the niche that the space is, it's all about the culture. The thinking is that when you can influence people's culture, you can influence their behavior and you can influence their decisions. The reality is that this will not happen in one day. But over time, people will always remember what they heard, what they saw, and that will have an impact in how they think of our country from whatever paradigm, whether it's at the ballot, whether it's how they do their work in wherever they are. They'll always be remembering that I saw something interesting. I saw a graffiti which showed a warthog that was eating a small child. Now, what does that tell you about humanity? Have we become that gross? Have we become that uncaring? Now, what will you do once you see that? That becomes your decision. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your contribution. It has been a pleasure having you. Sadly, we have come to the end of the show. Our guest today was Shitemi Hamadi, and I have been your host, Sarah Yunus. Until next time.
Hello, 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 Africa. Jambo, jambo.